Hello, I'm Andy King, technical editor of Good Woodworking magazine, and today we're going to do a little bit of work on basic workshop rotation within machinery. Okay, so looking at the timber we're going to use today, this is classed as US. It doesn't mean unsatisfactory, it means unsorted. This is joinery grade timber, allegedly. Now, what that means is, depending on where it's come from, I think it's Russia use first, second, thirds and fourths is unsorted, and I think Scandinavia is first, second, thirds. It could be the other way around, I'm not too sure. But what you tend to find is it is actually sorted. It means it's gone through a grading system just by eye, and it picks out tiny little flaws, you know, like little pinhole knots, that sort of stuff. It works on anything like blue stain, split, shakes, that sort of thing, and it's graded by eye and given a category because of it. You'll find that when you go beyond this is joinery grade. When you go beyond this sort of situation, you'll be into fifths, which is the one most people are aware of, which is your stuff that all your mouldings are made out of. Normally, when you go to the timber yard, so it will be your skirtings, your architraves, all that sort of thing will be classed as fifths, and they're redwoods. Whitewood we won't go into because it's pretty wild, no good for anything whatsoever, to be honest, but it's the sort of stuff you find in the sheds is cheap timber, or very expensive timber actually, but cheap if you know what I mean. So you can see on this, you've got really, really tight growth rings on the end. You know, so you're looking for a really dense timber, real sort of good weight to it. This is quite resiny, and it's a timber that's going to be sort of, you know, it'll give you a decent finish. It'll clean up well. In theory, it should stay stable, and that's what you're looking for first and foremost is a good, solid, stable timber. Now, again, this, to be perfectly honest, isn't as good as it could be. You've certainly got some of the things you need, which is, you know, minimal knots and minimal sort of, you know, nice tight growth rings, but you've also got a bit of shake here on the heart. That's always going to be the case, I'm afraid, but the problem is you've got to work this into when you do your project as to whether that's going to be seen or not. Now, luckily, I think I can get over the fact that because I'm going to be making a framework that's predominantly going to be 75 by 50, if I take those rips off the outside, the middle portion there with the split in, if I flip that up on its edge and then resaw it again, then that will hopefully give me the piece of timber I need to do my door with, because that's going to be that much narrower. So in theory, if you look on the other side of the timber, what you've got is sort of splits on one side, and on this side it's clean. So in theory, hopefully by removing what will essentially be about 3/4 of an inch off of the width of it once it's ripped down, or off the thickness once it's ripped down, should I say, that will hopefully get rid of those surface splits and then give me clean timber underneath that I can actually work with. It's a little bit suck it and see. You can hope for the best and it may work. If not, then it's back to square one and you've got to start using thicker stock again and then remachine. But off the outside edge rather than the middle, if the middle is too bad that you can't use. It's something you learn when you do your working out. It's no good thinking, okay, I've worked out what I need to make my door and frame. I know I need X amount of timber, go to the timber yard and buy it and then get back. You've got to allow for wastage no matter what. And depending on what timber you use, it could be a hell of a lot, because with hardwoods especially, you've got, you know, things like sap to contend with on certainly on things like cherry, waney edge on certain oaks, that sort of stuff. You know, so you've got to be looking at it sort of building that into your costings when especially if you're doing a job for somebody else rather than yourself, but also for yourself as well, because economy is one thing, but actual cost of timber, it's one of those things that you've really got to factor in. So, as I say, if you get the opportunity to go to the timber yard and sort through the timber, all well and good. Some yards let you do it, some don't. But if you can, it's always wise to look at, first and foremost, what you're trying to achieve. Again, with your cutting list, go with a cutting list if you can. Measure it up, look at what you need to get out of your timber, and then from that point onwards, hopefully it should work out quite economical for you to actually do your job properly and do it how you want to do it. Okay, so this is the actual little sketch I've done just to give me a rough idea of what I'm trying to achieve. So I'm looking at an overall dimension here to here of 500 mil. Overall height here to here of 700 mil. You note in brackets I've put 600, 750. I've allowed a little bit more for horns on the top because invariably you've got like about 50 mil either side on here. It's good standard practice in a lot of joinery situations where it stops it getting damaged prior to being used. Also, it gives you the opportunity then, you can actually put a bridle joint through, which is basically an open tenon. So what happens is, it goes through as a mortise and tenon properly, and then you either nail down through or screw down through, whatever your preference is, because 9 times out of 10 any framework is constrained within some sort of opening, so it can't move itself apart once it's in there. So there's no real need to start putting haunches or restrict your tenon a little bit further back. So therefore, when that's cut off, that actually becomes a bridle joint. But it gives you that bit of additional strength when you're making it up. On the height, all you're doing is a projecting tenon coming through, so about 25 mil is enough for that, because you've got to remember, most of this coming off, which would be a snipe situation, which would be sort of half and half up there, if there is any involved, that will come off on a shoulder line back there. It would be cut off as a cheek on the actual tenon itself. So you'd remove that as well. So you really want to allow about sort of 25 mil overall either end, so 50 mil overall on heights, on widths, about 100 mil, so 50 mil either end, depending on the component and where it's fitting in. Now, that's because a frame, the heads go through, the jambs come up underneath. On a door, it's the other way around. The stiles come up and the rails come in between. So in that situation, on the doors, I'd allow, again, an extra 100 mil or whatever on top. And on the actual stiles, it'd be about 50 mil overall, 25 mil either side. So again, you can work out what you need. So you look at sort of, an extra 600 mil. So it's going to be 600 overall component size. This is the sawn size. On the height, 750. Again, that could be 700 there on the height of the door, and 450 on the width. So in the brackets there are the actual sizes I'll be cutting to length, or the size I'll need to work out overall on these planks when they're cut to go into the machine. Now from that point onwards, then I've worked out what I need to use. It's going to be 75 by 50, which is rebated for the frame. The door is going to be 75 by 25, and there's a player for the panel. And you've got a raised panel, which is MDF. And the bottom door well, I was thinking about doing 100 mil, but it's only a project just for this situation, so I've taken it back to 75 just for ease of just machining and sort of more economy with the timber. But normally you'd work out, 100 mil rail, so you need to work out within your parameters of your timber that if you cut 100 mil off, you may end up with a long offcut that's not of use to anything. The other situation you may find, if you cut it off the length that way, you may find yourself leaving yourself a little bit short on other sizes. So it's a situation where you've got to look at what you're doing. So you might find that it may work out better to cut, if you've got, say, a rail that's needed to be sort of 500 mil long in 100 mil wide, but you also need 2 rails at, say, 300 mil wide, then you could get away with sort of cutting it at 600 first and then zipping that off, cutting out your 4-inch piece, and then that gives you the other piece to do rails again. But it's down to the economy of your timber. These are the sort of things you learn to work out once you start getting into setting out properly and using cutting lists how they should be used. And obviously, you can then determine the size of timber you're going to buy at the actual timber merchants as well. This is 9x2, it's a standard stock size. 6x2 is also standard. So it's certainly down to what you're doing and what you need. Now from there, you go onto your cutting list because you've got your dimensions, you know what you need to do. So over here, you work out what you're going to be cutting to. So you've got your head and your sill, your jambs, and you need 2 of each. Sizes there are actual sawn size and overall lengths. And again, top rails, bottom rails, again sawn sizes, overall lengths. And from that point onwards, it's then just a matter of cutting up on the machine. And if you need to, redimension before you go to that situation. But if you're, like I said, if you're leaving yourself in a short timber situation, keep it over long for safety's sake, or also double it up so you end up with 2 pieces off of 1 length so that it's safer to put through the machines, and then you can go back over it and do your planing up after that.